Good afternoon. Welcome to the board meeting of the Teachers Retirement System for December 15th, 2022. I'll start by calling the roll. Brian Berge,
Brian Berge, representing Mayor Eric Adams, participating sadly remotely today.
Thomas Brown,
Present. Good afternoon, Patricia.
Russell Buckley,
Present for Health Education Policy Chair, Dr. Angela Green, and DOE's Chief Financial Officer, Sarita Scott.
thank you. Allison Hirsch, John Dawson,
Yeah, John Dorser representing Controller Brad Lander and Allison Hirsch.
David Kazansky,
Present.
Deborah Penny.
Present. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We have a quorum. Next, we'll do an update from TR separation. And Kavita Khan wants here to give us that update.
Hi, good afternoon all. TRS has implemented the final provision of Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022. The law temporarily excludes overtime pay for the wage figures used to set pension contributions rates for some Tier 6 members. As a result of the change, over 7,000 members had their 2022 contribution rates reduced, and they also received a refund of excess contributions in November. On January 1st, a new plan year goes into effect for Tier 6 members, which means their contribution rates are again subject to change. TRS is currently reviewing updated salary and wage information for these members and will implement any required rate changes in January. TRS has completed the latest member newsletters, in-service news and benefit reports. A member will receive their newsletters in the mail later this month. Thank you.
You send that to us electronically.
Thank you, Kavita.
Kavita, for the Tier 6 members that got the refund, can you send us a letter, a sample letter of what they must have received a letter right along?
Sure, yes.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Next is an update from the actuary.
Thank you. So as you know, the actuarial interest rate is 7%. It's set in statute, and that statute defining the 7% expires July 1st, 2023. So that affects the employer contribution rate for the fiscal years 2024 and later. The actuary doesn't set the actuarial interest rate. The state legislature does based on recommendations of the various stakeholders. My recommendation is to keep it at 7% and extend it for 2 more years. So change the date from July 1st, 2023 to July 1st, 2025. And we're asking the board's support, formal support, supporting my office to work with the law department in drafting the extender bill for this legislation. In your package, you should have a 1-page handout slide titled Actuarial Interest Rate Discussion. And this is kind of, if I could just spend a couple minutes going through this, kind of my thinking about the 7%. In the upper left-hand corner, you see the TRS historical returns. And, you see a lot of volatility. These are historical returns the Office of the Actuary has been tracking for the last 40 years. Since 1983, we basically take down the returns published by the Comptroller's Office. It's not a perfect representation because in the most recent years, the returns are net of expenses. In the later years, they're gross returns. So it's not a perfect apples to apples, but it's a pretty good representation of what the plan's done over the last 40 years. You see in the little table below, I put the geometric averages and their arithmetic returns over the last 10, 20, 30, and 40 years. You can see it's pretty good returns, well in excess of 7%. So I kind of, past performance isn't indicative of future, as they say in the investment world. So you can't base future returns on what's happened in the past, but this is more of a smell test. And if you look at this, the 7% smells pretty good. So that's the past. We're going to look at the present. That's the upper right-hand corner. This is what current other public sector retirement systems are using for their actuarial interest rate. This is based on a survey from NASRA, National Association of State Retirement Administrators. There's 131 public sector plans in there. You see that horizontal flat line across the middle, that's where the 7%. And there's a yellow arrow pointing to NYCers. And so on the x-axis, it's every other plan's name is shown. Teachers is right next to NYCers. Not shown in the data is the other three New York systems, police, fire, and BERS weren't part of this. So there's actually more at that horizontal 7% level. And you see all the way to the two ends, you have the extremes to the left, you got Kentucky Employee Retirement System at 5.25%. All the way to the right, you don't see the name, but at 7.55% is Mississippi PERS. Now, I don't know what their asset allocations are, how much they're managing, whether they're comparable. So that kind of makes this comparison, not too scientific. Once again, you shouldn't base your future interest rate based on what other plans are doing. But if you look at this, the message is your mainstream, the 7% is kind of what most plans are doing, or the majority of plans are doing. Now, when you get to the lower left-hand corner, that's where we start doing math and projecting what we think the investment consultants think your long-term expected returns are. And long-term is defined as 30 years. So these are results from a survey we did when we published your GASB 67 and 68 reports. So in the appendix of those reports, we have all of your own investment consultants' long-term projections for the total return and the inflation. And you can see TRS is at 7.35% long-term expectation. So once again, above the 7% that we're talking about extending. And in fact, if anything, you see the top row is fiscal year 2022, and then the bottom section is 2021. There's been an upward pressure on the expected returns. So your investment consultants are even thinking, it's going to be more than it has been since 2021. The final little point section here on the lower right-hand side is a quote from the last actuarial audit. So the controller hires an actuarial auditor every 4 years. And the last one was Bolton, and from their report dated June 4th, 2019, their opinion is the 7% is reasonable as an assumption. Now the controllers hired a new actuarial auditor. The new auditor's report is expected to be published March 2024. So that kind of ties into the 2-year request to extend it, so we can extend it 2 years, see what the new auditor says. We're in kind of a state of kind of uncertainty in the markets right now. So keeping it at 7%, seeing what happens over the next 2 years, seeing what the next auditor says, it's kind of what we're thinking the most reasonable approach is to the actuarial interest rate. And one last thing, I've been talking about the actuarial interest rate this whole time, but that statute that expires on July 1st, 2023 also sets 3 other interest rates that are actual interest rates that are credited to member contributions. Those are for tier 1, tier 2 members for the annuity savings fund and the increased take-home pay. Those historically have not changed. So we're also recommending in this bill extension that we keep those as the same. So I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions, but if they're not, we're asking that the board adopt a resolution. The office provided a sample instructing us to work with the law office. That becomes helpful when we submit the proposed bill to the legislature. And then the memorandum of support, we can say, TRS supported this, here's their resolution. So are there any questions?
Questions?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
That's great.
So next on the agenda is the executive director's report. And the first item is the next meeting. And it has been suggested that the next regular meeting of the Teachers Retirement Board be held on the 3rd Thursday of the month, January 19th, 2023. Next is a resolution for the authorization for the controller of the city of New York to invest certain QPP funds.
Please waive the reading.
Okay. Up to you.
Yep. Okay, do I have a motion to accept this?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Knansky. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye, sorry, I was unmuting. Aye.
Any discussions or questions? Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you for your continued support.
Next is authorization to the controller of the city of New York to invest certain tax-deferred annuity funds.
Again, please waive the reading.
Do I have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Once again, thank you on behalf of the Control's Office.
You are quite welcome.
Next is resolution in support of the legislation to continue certain interest rates.
Please skip to the resolve.
Resolved that the board requests that the corporation council develop with the review and assistance of the actuary, and that the New York State Legislature and Governor enact legislation providing for a 2-year extension of the current AIR, and the rates of special interest, additional interest, and then interest.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve support of legislation?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
The last resolution is for attendance at a conference. Resolved that the trustees of the Teachers Retirement Board hereby approve the attendance and participation of the executive director and or her designees and any interested trustee at the Council of Institutional Investors 2023 Spring Conference from March 6th through the 8th, 2023.
Do I hear a motion to approve attendance at the conference?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it's approved. If anyone is interested, please make sure you ask the executive director about it.
Okay, next is the calendar. And the first item on the calendar is the approval of the minutes. So we have the minutes from November 3rd, 2022 investment meeting minutes, November 17th, 2023 board meeting minutes, November 17th, 2023 special investment meeting minutes. So,
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Well, just a point of clarification, November 17th, 2023 didn't happen yet?
Okay.
No.
is very anxious.
Very good.
20, so, all right, November 17th, 2022 board meeting minutes, November 17th, 2022 special investment meeting minutes. Thank you.
I'm happy to so move those.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved.
On business, I just wanted to give the board an update that we had a discussion at a board meeting with Ken Gartner from OMB about the employee contribution process and suggested changes from OMB. I met with the executive director from the police pension fund as well as from NICERS. We reviewed everything and we just, our determination and the fact that the majority of our board members, not entirely, but the majority of our board members were not in favor of the change to the process. So we communicated that to OMB, that we don't think that, we believe that the controls that are in place are sound, and we believe that the process is efficient as it is, and we don't think the changes that are being recommended are going to make it any more efficient. So we wrote to them and said that we're not in favor of that change. I haven't heard back, but I did get a letter from OMB today under the existing process, what the employee contribution is going to be.
Good. Oh, that's great.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. But I'll go back to the calendar. There are items under the calendar. You all received an electronic copy of those items and had an opportunity to review them.
Please waive the reading of the calendar.
Thank you. So I think the calendar has to be voted on.
Do I hear a motion to approve the calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Allison.
Oh, Allison.
Feedback.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Calendar passes. I heard Brian.
So it's out of order, but did Brian vote? Is that what you were saying?
I did not vote, but I'm in favor, strongly in favor.
Did you want her to read the calendar, Brian?
No, that's okay.
Okay, just checking.
It's the contents of it.
Someday we'll go to Guinness Book of World Records.
Did he want a favor? What was his
He was in favor.
He was in favor. Yeah, he's not one of them. All right. Great. So I'll skip other business because I've already covered it, but questions and comments from the public? Seeing none?
Okay, since we have no other business, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Any questions? All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Ah, I'm terrible at this. Aye.
I was waiting for you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We stand adjourned.